What I want to do now, right, is just to roughly, I want to go through quickly, right, is the blocks to love. Right at the beginning of the course, Jesus says, your function here is to seek and find all the barriers to love that you have built against love. Okay? So anybody want to tell me what they think the barriers to love is?
Judgment.
Nope.
Trust. Trust is one of the big ones for me.
Who do you trust?
I don't trust myself.
Well, who do you trust?
Nobody.
Huh?
Nobody. Nobody.
What should you trust? What does Jesus say in the course that you should trust? The only thing you can trust? You've always trusted the ego. It's not true.
Right.
People say, I put my trust in God. You can't trust God because you don't know God. Yeah? So,
Just in the oneness, I would...
but you don't know oneness. You can only really trust something you know.
You have to have the experience, have you?
Yeah. So, where should your trust go?
Into your own experience?
No, you should put your trust in one thing and one thing only. Jesus said, of course, forgiveness. If you have started to apply forgiveness, you know forgiveness works. So therefore, that's what you put your trust into. Okay? You can't put trust, if you put your trust into forgiveness, that trust in forgiveness will take you to the knowing of God. Okay? Now, what Jesus says in the course, it's very obvious that you've always trusted the ego because you've always been in pain. And that's where your trust in the ego, the price that you pay for it, is pain, is suffering, is guilt, fear, all of those emotions. So what are the blocks to love? I'm going to do basically here, right? People think that the blocks to love are sin, guilt, fear. Okay? They're not really. Why?
They're not real.
Huh?
They're not real.
Because they're beliefs. Okay? They're not real. So, it's what keeps those real is the problem. These are the blocks. Alright? So we'll do this and we'll go from 10 and work our ways backwards, right? The first biggest block is the story. Okay, whose story? Our story. And it's the story of right and wrong. Okay? When we look out into the world of duality, we see what's right, we see what's wrong. We see who's right, we see who's wrong. We see who's guilty, we see who's innocent. That whole story is smoke and mirrors. It's meant to confuse you. It's meant to distract you. That's the ego's story. There is no story. As long as you're working out who's right and who's wrong, who's guilty and who's innocent, okay, you're avoiding the truth. And what's the truth?
It's all judgment.
It's all, everything you see outside you is a reflection of your own mind. Because we have a right and a wrong mind. We have a shadow and a persona. And both the shadow and the persona, the right and the wrong, is projected out. The persona is all our self-love. The shadow is all our self-hate. So everything you see in the world that's bad is your shadow. Everything you see in the world that's good is your persona. So now, because we see it out there, now we can get to forgive it and bring those projections back, both the good and the bad. Okay? The next biggest block okay? Reputation. What's your reputation? What's another word for reputation?
Ego.
It's a bit general to that. We'll go a little specificity.
Your specialness. What's special about you?
Which is? Your story, personal story.
Personal.
What part of yourself is it?
Your persona.
Yes. That's the part of ourselves. That's where we build. We build our persona. Our persona is how we want to be perceived in public. Okay? It's how we want the world to see it. As Carl Jung said, it's the packaging of the ego. So what we do is we have been building this persona, we've been building this reputation for a lifetime. And it's like our ego. Okay? But the ego is all three parts. The shadow, the personality, and the persona. Okay? So when someone attacks you or someone says something about you, okay, when someone attacks your reputation, all right, what they're really attacking is your persona. And this is what we cherish so much. We're always cherishing our persona. Okay? So, we all have this self-hate. And one of the ways that we keep the self-hate is we basically project it out. We're trying to get rid of it. And everything that you project out is what you keep. So the ego says, everything you don't like about yourself, get rid of it. And the more you get rid of it, the more you project it out, what it's secretly doing, that's how we keep it. Okay? So, but what we really want to keep and what we cultivate and what we're creating every day is our personas. Okay? So then when we come to know, right, another way to get rid of our self-hate, we embrace it. Especially those in the Course in Miracles. We don't like it at the beginning because we realize this is everything. Everything we see in the world is basically everything, everything we see in the world that we hate is basically our own self-hate. Now that's hard to stomach because there's some awful things that we see in the world and there's some awful things that we think about ourselves. So it's not nice at the beginning. But we'll embrace that because now we see a way that we can get rid of this once and for all. And that way is through forgiveness. Okay? So you can see we're always trying to get rid of the self-hate. But one of the things that we find very hard to give up is our special loves. And that's our persona. That's our reputation. So you can see we have no problem working with forgiveness with everything we don't like about ourselves now. But we find it hard to give up. We find it hard to see a problem with everything that we love in our lives. Everything we love about ourselves. And this is our reputation and our persona. So, as long as you're defending your reputation, you're defending your ego. Because remember, the ego is all three parts. Okay? The ego is the personality, the persona, and the shadow. So as long as you're keeping the persona in place, you're also keeping the shadow in place. Okay? You can't have a persona without having a shadow. You can't have a special love without a special hate. Because one creates the other. The next biggest block is the world. Okay? So what is the world? Why is it the block?
Because it's everything outside your self-position.
Mm-hmm. What does it contain? Our attachments. All the things that we love in the world. All our attachments. Because remember, not only have we to let go of the separated self, but we have to let go, which is an attachment, but we have to let go of the world also, and everything in the world. The one thing that's going to keep bringing you back here lifetime after lifetime is your attachments. And you have attachments to the world, you have attachment to the body, and you have attachment to other bodies. So those are the three attachments that have to be let go. So when you have to look at your things in the world now, what am I attached to? What can I not give up in the world? Because that's a block. And that brings us to number 7, which is our attachments. And the attachments, the biggest attachment we have of all is to ourself. When you look at yourself in the mirror, you either love yourself or you hate yourself. And you usually do both. So what you're really seeing is you're seeing your persona and you're seeing your shadow. You're actually looking at your entirety of your separated self. So you see things that you like about yourself and you see things you hate about yourself. And it's this self-image. This is the separated self. Okay? So we have attachments there. We have attachments to our special loves and we have attachments to our special hates. So everybody and everything we love in the world are our special loves, and everything we hate about ourselves and everybody else is also basically attachments. Then the next one, the next biggest block is false sympathy. Every time that you have sympathy for someone, every time you feel sorry for someone, you're creating a block to love, because you're reinforcing separation, you're reinforcing pain, you're reinforcing suffering, and you're actually reinforcing death. So false empathy basically is one of the blocks. Okay? The next one is forgiveness. It's forgiveness to destroy. Okay? And you will see forgiveness to destroy in the Song of Prayer in the Course of Miracles.
Can you explain forgiveness to destroy? What's that? I forgive you.
Well, there's four forms of forgiveness to destroy.
Yeah.
Well, there's actually 5. But forgiveness to destroy, the first one is where I will forgive the sinners of the world.
Yeah.
So I'm basically now a godly person,
Yeah.
and I'm going to forgive you because you're sinful. Okay? So, and the reason why that basically is forgiveness to destroy is because true forgiveness is joining.
Yeah.
Forgiveness to destroy is, as in the religions of the world, is also actually reinforcing separation.
Mm-hmm.
Because when I see you as guilty and myself as innocent, I'm saying you're separate from me.
Mm-hmm.
So true forgiveness is joining. The other form of forgiveness could be where I see you as sinful,
Mm-hmm.
and I join with you in that sinfulness. So I'm joining with you now in
It's
sin.
just reinforcing it.
Yeah, but what's wrong with that?
Well, you know, it's getting your needle was nowhere.
Yeah, right. Right, but what happens is the both of us are joining now in sin, but we're separating from God.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we're saying that both of us
Yeah.
are sinful.
Yeah.
The next one then is basically where, you know, I sit here now and maybe you're saying something that's quite hurtful.
Yeah.
And I basically grin and bear it, you know,
Yeah.
because I'm a nice God, you know, saintly person. I don't show my anger to you, I keep it inside.
Mm-hmm.
So basically that's now where I'm not being true to myself, that I really want to kill you, I really want to tell you to F off, but
Yeah.
because I'm doing A Course in Miracles, I just grin and bear it.
Oh, you do a Course of Miracles and how you do.
Yes, exactly. It's where you put on this holy persona. And the last one then is
Is that like passive aggression?
yes, exactly, passive aggressive. All right.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one then is bargaining and compromise.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I will forgive you if you don't do it again. I'm making a deal with you.
Yeah.
So I'm actually putting you into slavery. You know,
Mhm.
I will forgive you if you do this for me.
Yeah.
So it's like restitution. Okay, you're putting a price on your forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And then the 5th one is basically where you basically kind of say, you know, the sin's in you. All right, it's
Sorry?
your ego. It's your ego. Where you see the ego in other people, you're
Mhm.
denying that it's your ego. Okay, so it's like when you see someone and you go, somebody doing something wrong and you go, oh, that's that person's ego. That's their ego. If you see the ego in anybody, it's always your own ego. Because there's only one ego. If you see it, you've got it. So those are all blocks to love, because they're all forms of forgiveness that set out to destroy. These are the ego's conditions for forgiveness. Okay, the next one then is basically intellectualization. Okay, is one of the biggest blocks there is to A Course in Miracles. Because people are drawn into the Course through their ego, which is through their intellect, because they see this as basically one of the most sophisticated intellectual books on the planet today. And so they're drawn into it with their egos because they're trying to understand it. And I remember the story that Ken Wapnick said when this guy stood up in one of his classes and he says, I've got 2 PhDs. And he says, what? When is someone going to write this book in English? So what he was really saying is, I'm one of the smartest people on this planet, all right? But this book doesn't make any sense because my intellect can't decipher it.
I know a lady who lives in Donegal as well. She's a friend of the other Mary Nunes. You might know her. But she was saying to me that I was just talking to her about A Course in Miracles, and she said, yeah, I've been trying to read that book, and I know that there's something wonderful in it. She said, and I've got a PhD in psychology and something else. She said, so I should understand it, but I can't understand it.
You see, even though the way the book's written, Jesus draws the intellect into the book, there's somewhere in the book that you have to drop the intellectualization of it. Now, I know a few people, and they're studying this book for 25, 30 years, and they haven't done anything in the book. They have intellectualized it all of that time, reading it, deciphering it, trying to understand it. We must get behind the words, because what Jesus says in the Course, that words are twice removed from symbols. From reality, they're symbols of symbols twice removed. So what that means is, what he's really saying to people here is you have to get behind the words. Okay? You have to get to the symbols behind the words. Okay? And that means get behind the intellect. You have to drop the intellect at some point when you're doing A Course in Miracles. And how you drop the intellect is you actually start doing application. Because right at the beginning of the Course, Jesus says this is a course in application. Okay? Then we come to the top 2. Okay? And number 2 is rationalizations.
What happened to number 3?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, number 3. Number 3, okay? Number 3 is our rationalizations.
Realize. That's what we call it, realize.
Right, yeah. Because a rationalization is always you looking for an external excuse to an internal problem. It's an external justification for an internal problem. That's what a rationalization is. So it could be like,
Sorry, no, I was just going to say, if you could use an example, just as a...
yeah, it could be like, okay, you could say, right, you have this fear of flying. Do you have a fear of flying? No.
Yeah.
The fear is always inside you because it's coming from
Fear of
the
death.
belief in guilt. Belief in guilt, cause and effect. Sin, guilt, and fear, that's all there is. So you could say every time then you go near an airplane, this fear comes up and you say, this is the ego. The ego said there's no separation, there's no belief in separation. What are you talking about? You're afraid of flying, that's it. People could be afraid of spiders. That's a rationalization of fear. People could feel guilt and they could go, oh, I'm so guilty, I forgot to do this, I have this sense of guilt. I forgot to buy you a present for your birthday. Okay? That's a rationalization. Why are they feeling guilty? The guilt's always been inside. It's coming from the belief in separation. Okay? So you have the three primary causes of everything, which is sin, guilt, and fear. And the ego is basically always trying to rationalize them because it doesn't want you to see the truth. Okay? So you could basically, forget to pay for something. And after that, maybe you got a coffee or whatever and was distracted, so you didn't pay for it, and maybe a couple of hours later the ego reminds you, oh, you didn't pay for that coffee, and now you're sitting there and you have this sense of sin about these, this sense of guilt, of course. And you'll be thinking, oh God, I feel like this now because I didn't pay for that. But that's not true. That sense is inside you all the time. It's coming from the belief in separation. So as long as you keep rationalizing, everything that you rationalize negative, you keep. Everything you rationalize positive, you lose. So it could meet someone and fall in love, and you could feel this overwhelming sense of love, and you'll rationalize it and say, oh, you make me feel so happy, I'm so blissful because I'm with you. That's a rationalization. Now you're going to lose it.
So why are you happy?
Huh? It's inside all the time. It's like, no matter who you meet in the street, that person will show you what's inside you all the time. They'll show you your belief in separation, which is sin, guilt, and fear that's inside you all the time. Or they'll show you heaven that's inside you, the bliss, the joy, that extreme happiness. When you fall in love, you're just remembering heaven. It's inside you all the time. You don't need this other person. But when you rationalize it, that it's this other person, when this person changes or this person leaves, they take it with them. So the ego's always trying to get rid of heaven that's inside by projecting it out and saying it's out there in the world. It's not inside you. It's in this person, or it's in that person, or it's in this special place, or it's in that special place. And then the ego's trying to say to you, right, all the fear is coming from this, it's coming from that person, it's coming from this, or it's coming from that. Your sense of guilt is coming from, what you said here or what you did there.
So you have to try and hold on to then, if it's a relationship.
Yeah. You just bring it back inside and you realize that this is in me, this is my own joy and peace that I'm covering up and denying all the time. Every time that you have a thought and think, quite honestly, you could go to someplace and you go, I had the most amazing day yesterday in that place. You're going to lose it again. You're giving it away. Instead, you could go, that place showed me the most amazing feeling that's inside me. Do you know what I'm saying? Turn it around.
But we're conditioned so much.
I
the
know,
other
but
way.
this is what the whole course is about. It's about overturning this condition, and it's about letting this condition, it's the reversal of everything. That's what Jesus says the Course of Miracles is. It's the total reversal of our thinking, or of our thought process. Do you know? So everything that you used to think, it's about just turning it upside down. And this is why he says in the Course that our perception is upside down. You know. So, number 2. Alright? Anybody guess what it is? Anybody guess what the last 2 is? This was my first great insight when I was showing this. That was one of the spots that I got straight away. And when I started teaching this, it kind of turned a lot of heads at the beginning. But everybody's quoting it now. The ego right mind.
Oh, yes.
That's one of the biggest blocks in A Course in Miracles. Because the ego right mind contains all our spiritual specialness. It contains forgiveness to destroy. It contains prayer to destroy. It contains all our persona, all our special loves. If you read the Song of Prayer, you'll see everything in the ego right mind within it.
In the Song of Prayer.
Yeah. It's all the ego right mind.
Are you saying that the Song of Prayer was written from the ego right mind?
No, it's written about the ego right
Oh,
mind.
yes, sorry.
It
sorry.
basically it reveals everything in the ego right mind. There's a vast amount in there. False empathy is in the ego right mind. Sympathy is in the ego right mind. Who wants to go into it now? And what's the number one? What's the number one block? Very knowledgeable bunch, aren't you?
Yeah. Separations in there.
The separated self. That's the biggest block to love. Why? Remember we talked about it? The you that's doing A Course in Miracles is the you that has to undo itself. So what do you think about that, Michael?
Yeah.
You're like the turkey that's voting for Christmas.
But did you say, I seem to recall you saying recently, that the ego wants to be enlightened?
Yes. The ego's on a journey to waken up.
But is the ego on a journey to pretend to want to make up or to appear?
No, the ego, everybody that starts out on A Course in Miracles starts out here. Okay? Everybody starts out teaching A Course in Miracles, starts teaching it from the ego right mind. And there's actually people who have spent 20 years still teaching it in the ego right mind. And that's not a judgment, by the way, before everybody gets on to me, alright? But everybody that's doing the Course in Miracles starts out basically from the ego right mind. Okay? So it's this ego right-minded persona that we have of ourselves that sets out to do A Course in Miracles, that wants to become enlightened. Okay? But somewhere on the journey through the Course, you're going to have to waken up to the fact, alright, for you to wake up, you have to let go of the separated self. Because as long as you hold on to the separated self, the ego in its entirety, then that is keeping you from waking up. And the ego wants to be enlightened more than anything else. And one of the reasons, you know, for centuries people have been on this quest to be enlightened, it's their egos that's on that quest. And this is why very, very few people become enlightened on that journey. It's because they don't realize that the self who is on this search for enlightenment is the exact self that's keeping enlightenment from them.
So, are you saying the ego wants to become enlightened above everything else,
Yes.
but the ego doesn't realize that it's on its way to its own annihilation in that case?
Yeah. And this is why so many people find it so hard to let their ego go. Because they can't specify the difference. They actually think that the personality is who they are. Because it's the personality who was drawn to the Course. It's the persona who is their ego who wants to be enlightened then. So it's kind of like I built this reputation. A guy came to me and he says, I have 30 years of spiritual knowledge. Came to do a retreat. And he left 10 minutes later because I told him you're going to have to just forget about everything you've ever learned. He didn't like it. Then he got up and walked out. You know, because this is what Jesus says at the beginning of the Course. You must unlearn everything that you think you have learned. Because it's all to do with your
That's
ego.
like the bullets. You can't go along with a full cup. You can never
Exactly.
get it.
You have to empty the cup.
I met a girl at a meditation I used to do, and she was telling me she asked for her ego to be, you know, good. And she said it was like being slammed
Yeah.
and slammed against the doors. So she said you have to really be careful.
It's
And
like
she'd been a meditator for about 30 years.
this is really like a death. I remember for about a year after I woke up, I felt like I was dying. I really felt I was dying. I was starting to give away all my stuff and everything, like, you know, because that separated self within me began to dissolve. It was my personality and my persona, because I had been letting go of my shadow too. I've been practicing forgiveness every day, like. But I really felt like I was dying, and I was dying. But it was this separated self that was dying, it was dissolving, and I felt it so real that I was dying. You know, and I know Debbie and a few other people are having that same experience where they literally feel that they're dying, do you know? And it does feel like a death. Do you know? Okay, we're going to have a little break now.